The fall from grace. The heavens trembled as the war raged, a storm of divine fury and broken oaths. Seraphiel, once the brightest of the archangels, stood at the edge of the silver spire, his wings burning with the wrath of 1,000 suns. Below him the celestial armies clashed, swords of holy fire carving through flesh and spirit alike. He had warned them. He had begged the high celestium to see reason, to spare the mortals from their merciless judgment. But the throne of light had decreed annihilation, and dissent was treason. A blade of searing radiance pierced his side, and Seraphiel roared, his voice shaking the foundations of the sky. Blood golden and luminous spilled from his wound, sizzling as it struck the marble floors of paradise. His own brethren, those he had fought beside for eons, now hunted him like a beast. "Traitor!" thundered Michael, his sword raised for the final strike. "You defy the will of heaven." Seraphiel's wings, once radiant, now flickered like dying embers. He staggered back, his gaze sweeping over the battlefield, corpses of angels, the shattered gates, the distant world of mortals below, unaware of their impending doom. With a snarl, he spread his tainted wings and leapt not forward, but down. The wind screamed as he plummeted, the light of heaven fading above him. The air burned, his flesh blistering as he tore through the veils of creation. Below, the mortal realm awaited, cloaked in shadow. He struck the earth like a fallen star, the impact carving a crater of smoldering ruin, bones shattered. Blood no dark, no longer golden pooled beneath him. His wings, broken and blackened, twitched in agony. And then laughter raw and guttural escaped his lips. He had fallen, but he was not dead, and the world above would soon learn the price of casting him out. The first chapter of his vengeance had begun. Shadows of the past. The crater still smoked where Seraphiel had fallen, the earth itself rejecting the weight of his divine ruin. His body, once a vessel of celestial light, now lay twisted in the mud, his wings charred and skeletal jutting from his back like broken spears. Blood, thick and black as tar, oozed from his wounds, seeping into the soil with a hiss. Memories flickered behind his ice flashes of the silver spire, the cold gaze of the high celestium, the moment Michael's blade had carved through his flesh. Betrayal, that was the wound that burned deepest. With a groan he dragged himself forward, his fingers clawing into the dirt. Every movement sent jagged pain through his ruined form, but pain was nothing. Pain was a reminder that he still lived, that he still had purpose. The land around him was a wasteland, a forgotten stretch of earth where even the wind howled in mourning. But there was something else, something older than heaven, darker than hell. He could feel it in the whispers that slithered through the air, in the way the shadows seemed to coil around him like serpents. Then a voice not spoken, but felt vibrating in his bones. You were cast out, but you are not alone. Seraphiel's head snapped up, his eyes once gold, now smoldering ember scanning the gloom. The voice came again, slithering from the depths of the earth itself. We remember you, Seraphiel. We remember the first war, before the throne claimed victory. A tremor ran through the ground. The dirt split open, revealing a yawning chasm where no light dared to linger. From its depths something stirred ancient, hungry, the forgotten, the ones who had been buried when heaven rewrote creation. A skeletal hand, wrapped in chains of dead stars, emerged from the abyss, fingers curling an invitation. Join us, the voice hissed. Remember what was taken from you and rise again. Seraphiel's lips peeled back in a blood-stained grin. The past was not dead, and neither was he. The Awakening. The chasm breathed. Seraphiel stood at its edge, his ruined wings twitching as the abyss exhaled a wind that reeked of forgotten wars and buried gods. The skeletal hand still hovered before him, its chains clinking like the whispers of the dead. His blood-black and seething dripped onto the fingers of the forgotten, and the earth trembled in response. He reached out. The moment his flesh touched the skeletal grasp, fire erupted through his veins. Not the purifying blaze of heaven, but something older, hungrier darkness that coiled around his bones like a second skeleton. His back arched as his wings, broken and ashen, suddenly moved. Not with the grace of an angel, but with the jagged, unnatural motion of something being reforged. Tendrils of shadow lashed from the chasm, wrapping around his limbs, his torso, his throat. They burrowed beneath his skin, stitching his wounds with threads of living night. His golden eyes, once dimmed, now burned crimson as the whispers of the forgotten filled his skull. You are light? Now you are more. His scream tore through the wasteland as his wings snapped outward, no longer feathered, but vast and leathern, veined with pulsing darkness. The ground beneath him cracked, and from the fissures rose specters of the ancient dead, their hollow eyes fixed upon their new. Herald, power raw, blasphemous, delicious fluted him. He could feel it, the pulse of the world, the fear of mortals in their cities, the distant fading glow of heaven's gaze. They had cast him out. Now he would make them regret it. With a shuddering breath, Seraphiel rose, his shadow stretching. Farther than any mortal might, the forgotten slithered back into the abyss, their task complete. Their champion had awakened, and the world would soon learn to kneel. A deal with darkness. The cavern pulsed with a heartbeat not its own. Seraphiel stood in the bowels of the earth, where the air was thick with the iron scent of old blood, and the whispers of things that should never have been named. His new wings, vast and bat-like, curled around his form like a living cloak, their edges bleeding shadows that twitched with unnatural hunger. Before him the darkness coalesced, taking shape a throne of writhing tendrils, and upon it a figure, with eyes like dying stars. The Lord of the Forgotten had been waiting. No words passed between them. None were needed. The entity extended a hand that was more void than flesh, and in its palm flickered a single ember, a shard of the first darkness, the kind that existed before light had been spoken into being. It called to Seraphiel, that ember, promised him the power to tear down the silver spire, to make the heavens weep. The price? His name, his past, the last remnants of the angel he had once been. Seraphiel did not hesitate. He grasped the ember, and it seared through his flesh like acid. His scream shook the cavern, sending cracks spider-webbing through the ancient stone. The darkness rushed into him, filling his veins with liquid night, scouring away the final traces of divine grace. His wings shuddered, their sinews snapping and reforming, now edged with hooked claws. His blood boiled black, and when it spilled upon the ground, the earth itself recoiled. The Lord of the Forgotten leaned forward, its voice the sound of 1,000. graves opening. "Rise," it commanded, "and drown the world in their reckoning." Seraphiel smiled, his teeth sharpening to points. The deal was struck, and now the hunt would begin. The first blood. The night trembled as Seraphiel took flight for the first time since his rebirth. His wings, now monstrous membranes of shadow and sinew, carved through the clouds like blades through flesh. Beneath him the mortal world sprawled in ignorant bliss, its flickering lights oblivious to the predator circling above. A village slept near the edge of a blackened forest, its thatched roofs huddled together like sheep awaiting slaughter. Seraphiel descended, his form wreathed in a shroud of living darkness. The air grew thick with the metallic promise of blood even before his taloned feet touched the ground. The first to die was a watchman. One moment, the man stood yawning by his torch. The next, Seraphiel's claws erupted through his chest in a spray of crimson. The body convulsed, suspended on the dark angel's arm like a grotesque puppet, before being tossed aside like discarded meat. Blood sizzled where it struck Seraphiel's obsidian skin, the dark runes carved into his flesh glowing hungrily as they drank their fill. Chaos erupted. Screams tore through the night as villagers stumbled from their homes, only to meet the edge. Seraphiel's wrath. His wings became weapons, their hooked tips impaling flesh with sickening ease. A fleeing woman slipped in the mud. Her terrified face was the last thing she saw before his foot crushed her skull like overripe fruit. Children wailed as their parents were torn apart before them, their innocent tears mingling with the blood now painting the cobblestones. But it was the priest who interested him most. The holy man stood trembling in the doorway of his chapel, clutching a golden symbol of the heavens, the very symbol Seraphiel had once served. Their eyes met, and in that moment the priest understood. His lips formed a prayer, but before the words could escape, Seraphiel's hand closed around his face. The dark angel leaned close, his breath like embers against the priest's ear. "Tell your God," he whispered, "his judgment has come." Then he squeezed brains, and bone fragments sprayed across the chapel doors as the priest's head burst like a wineskin. Seraphiel let the twitching corpse drop, his wings stretching wide as the village burned behind him. The first blood had been spilled, and it would not be the last. Whispers of rebellion. The stench of charred flesh still clung to Seraphiel's wings as he surveyed the aftermath of his wrath. The village had been reduced to smoldering ruins, its cobblestone streets now slick with congealing blood. Carrion birds circled overhead, their raucous cries mingling with the moans of the few survivors, who crawled through the wreckage like broken insects. But something unexpected stirred in the ashes. A lone figure stood amidst the carnage, untouched by flame or blade. Cloaked in tattered gray, the stranger watched Seraphiel with eyes that burned with something other than fear recognition. When the dark angel spread his wings to depart, the figure spoke, its voice carrying through the smoke without effort. "They call you monster, but we know the truth." Seraphiel paused, his talons digging into scorched earth. The stranger pulled back its hood, revealing a face marked with forbidden sigils, the brand of those who had turned against heaven long before his fall. "The forgotten have waited for one such as you," the figure continued, gesturing to the destruction surrounding them. "This is but a beginning. The mortal realms tremble. and heaven watches with growing unease. From the folds of its cloak the stranger produced a dagger forged from a shard of the silver spire itself, its edge still gleaming with traces of divine light. "Take this," it urged. "Spill celestial blood with their own steel, and the rebellion will rise." Seraphiel grasped the weapon, his corrupted flesh smoking where it touched the holy metal. The pain was exquisite. Around them shadows deepened as more cloaked figures emerged from the ruins. Here a disgraced exorcist, there a fallen paladin, all bearing the marks of those who had turned against the light. The dark angel smiled. "Let heaven watch. Let them tremble. Their reckoning had only just begun." The broken covenant. The cathedral doors exploded inward in a storm of splintered oak and twisted iron. Seraphiel strode through the wreckage, his wings casting jagged shadows across the hallowed halls where he had once knelt in prayer. The air reeked of incense, and fear-thick, cloying, delicious dot before the altar. A circle of archpriests stood frozen in their chant, their holy vestments suddenly worthless against the darkness that had come to claim them. Their golden censers clattered to the floor. As Seraphiel advanced, each step leaving smoldering footprints in the sacred carpets. The High Inquisitor, face ashen beneath his jeweled mitre, raised a trembling hand. You cannot do this," he gasped. "This place is sanctified." Seraphiel's laughter echoed through the vaulted ceilings like the cracking of bones. With a flick of his clawed fingers, the stained glass windows depicting heavenly glory shattered inward, raining down in 1,000 blood-colored shards. The priests screamed as the razored fragments found their flesh, embedding themselves in throats and eyes and trembling hands. The dark angel reached the altar where the covenant scroll, the sacred pact between heaven and earth, lay unfurled. His shadow fell across the divine parchment, the inked words writhing as if in agony. "No more lies," Seraphiel whispered. He plunged the holy dagger, the shard of the silver spire, straight through the scroll. Golden fire erupted, consuming the ancient vellum in an instant. The very foundations of the cathedral groaned as centuries of divine protection evaporated like morning mist. Outside, the sky darkened. Thunder rolled across the heavens, not in warning, but in mourning. The sacred bond was broken, and as the first drops of black rain began to fall, Seraphiel turned to the cowering priests, his smile a promise of horrors yet to come. Echoes of betrayal. The black rain fell for 7 days and nights, turning rivers to ink and fields to bubbling swamps. The cathedral's broken spires stood as jagged teeth against a weeping sky, its once hallowed halls now home to crawling things that feasted on the corpses of the faithful. But deeper than the physical ruin ran the wound in creation itself. The torn covenant had left the world bleeding divine essence, and the hungry things of the void were beginning to notice. Seraphiel perched atop the cathedral's highest remaining arch, his talons digging into crumbling stone as he watched the chaos unfold below. The mortal world convulsed in its death, throws villages swallowed by sudden chasms, forests withering to ash in hours, mad prophets screaming of the coming dark. Yet it was the heavens that interested him most. Through the veil of falling darkness, he could see them, the distant shimmer of the silver spire, its light flickering like a guttering candle. The celestial host was gathering, their armored forms gleaming as they prepared for war. But among their ranks something was amiss, a flash of rebellion, a spark of doubt. Here, an angel hesitated before raising their sword. There, a seraph's wings drooped with unspoken grief. The echoes of his own betrayal resonated through the host, and cracks were forming in their perfect unity. Then came the first fall. A streak of silver and crimson tore through the storm. Clouds, as an angel know, a former angel plummeted from the heavens. Their wings burned away mid-descent, their scream a symphony of agony and liberation. They struck the earth near Seraphiel's perch, creating a crater of smoldering dirt and broken marble. The dark angel descended, his shadow swallowing the fallen one's broken form. Through cracked lips, the rebel whispered a single word, "Remembered?" And Seraphiel did. He remembered the lies, the chains, the betrayal, and as more streaks of light began to pierce the darkened sky, more angels choosing damnation over blind obedience, he knew the time had come. The war would not be heaven against hell. It would be the betrayed against their betrayers. The forbidden power. The fallen angel's corpse still smoldered in the crater, its divine flesh bubbling like molten silver. Seraphiel crouched over the remains, his clawed fingers tracing the intricate sigils burned into the being's chest marks of binding, of imprisonment. This was no ordinary rebel, but one who had touched something ancient, something profane. A whisper slithered from the dead angel's parted lips, carrying the scent of burnt myrrh and something older than time. It spoke of a vault buried deep beneath the ruins of the first war, where the weapons of the old ones slept in eternal darkness. Weapons that could shatter the silver spire itself. Seraphiel's wings twitched with predatory anticipation. The descent into the abyss took 7 nights. The earth resisted his passage, its crust splitting open only when drenched in the blood of sacrificed angels, their screams echoing through the hollow places of the world. The deeper he plunged, the more the air thickened with the weight of forgotten sins, until even his corrupted form trembled under the pressure. At last, he stood before the black gate. It was not stone, not metal, but something alive, a living membrane of pulsating darkness that recoiled at his touch. The gate recognized him, remembered him. With a snarl, Seraphiel drove the holy dagger, still slick with priestly blood, into the gate's center. The reaction was immediate. The gate screamed. Tendrils of liquid shadow lashed out, wrapping around his arms, his throat, his wings. They burrowed beneath his flesh, seeking to consume him. But Seraphiel was no longer just an angel. He was something more. His own darkness rose to meet the assault, a maelstrom of corruption that tore through the ancient defenses. The gate split open with a sound like a dying universe. Inside, floating in a void beyond time, rested a single shard of obsidian, the heart of the first fallen god. As Seraphiel's fingers closed around it, the world above convulsed. Mountains crumbled, oceans turned to blood, and in the heavens the silver spire cracked for the first time in eternity. The gathering storm. The world held its breath. Seraphiel emerged from the abyss transformed, the obsidian shard embedded in his chest like a second, darker heart. Its power pulsed through his veins with each thunderous beat, sending ripples of corruption through the fabric of reality. The skies had turned the color of a fresh bruise, swirling in unnatural patterns, as if the very air recoiled from his presence. Across the broken lands, signs of the coming storm multiplied in the mortal cities. Panic spread like plague. The devout fell to their knees as their holy symbols cracked and bled. The faithless ran screaming through the streets as their shadows twisted into monstrous parodies of themselves. Blood rained from cloudless skies in some regions, while in others the sun simply vanished, leaving only a gaping black void in the heavens. The silver spire's light grew dimmer with each passing hour. Seraphiel stood atop the ruins of the celestial outpost he destroyed, watching as his forces gathered. The fallen angels came first, their once radiant wings now leathery and blackened, their eyes burning with the same fury that had consumed him. Then came the forgotten, slithering from their underground tombs after eons of imprisonment. Last arrived the mortal cults, their bodies marked with sigils carved in their own blood, their mouths frothing with fanatic devotion. A tremor ran through the ground as the first of the ancient war machines awakened, a colossal construct of blackened bone and cursed at iron, its hollow eyes flickering with malevolent intelligence. One by one, the weapons of the old ones stirred from their slumber, answering the call of the shard buried in Seraphiel's chest. High above, the clouds parted just enough to reveal a terrifying sight, the celestial legions amassing at heaven's gates, their golden armor reflecting the dying light. The archangels raised their swords in unison, their battle cry shaking the foundations of creation. Seraphiel spread his wings, their shadow stretching across the land like an eclipse. Let them come. The storm would break soon, and the world would drown in its fury. The dark coronation. The obsidian throne rose from the earth like a blade piercing the world's heart, forged from the shattered remnants of 100 fallen churches. The ground trembled as jagged spires of black crystal erupted skyward, forming a twisted cathedral. Beneath the weeping heavens, the air itself curdled with the stench of burning divinity, the last gasps of slaughtered angels still clinging to the scorched earth. Seraphiel ascended the steps of bones human, celestial, and things that were, neither his every footfall leaving cracks that oozed thick black blood. The obsidian shard in his chest pulsed in time with the dying world's heartbeat, its dark radiance illuminating the faces of the damned who gathered to witness the birth of a new god. The forgotten came first, their skeletal forms wreathed in, ghost flames placing upon his brow a circlet of frozen screams, each gem a captured moment of angelic agony. The fallen angels came next, their broken wings shedding feathers like ash as they drove 7 spikes of celestial iron through his flesh, each wound a sacrament, each scream of pain a hymn. Then came the sacrifice, a captured archangel, its once glorious, wings now stumps of cauterized flesh, was dragged forward in chains of burning scripture. Seraphiel rose from his throne, the shadows themselves curling around his form like adoring serpents. With one taloned hand he tore the celestial being's heart from its chest, a glowing, golden thing that pulsed with the last light of heaven as the archangel's dying shriek faded into silence. Seraphiel crushed the heart in his fist. Liquid fire cascaded down his arm, etching dark sigils into his flesh. As the throne beneath him awakened, the ground split open for miles around, revealing a chasm where countless winged figures stirred, an army of the long buried, waiting for their king's command. The sky shattered like glass, revealing the yawning void beyond. And in that moment, as the last remnants of heavenly light guttered out above him, the dark angel became something more, something eternal. War of heaven and hell. The sky burned. Seraphiel's throne of bones hovered above the battlefield, suspended in the churning vortex between realms. Below him stretched an ocean of carnage celestial legions, and shattered, armor locked in brutal combat with the risen forgotten. Their conflict turning the earth to a bubbling morass of blood and divine ichor. The air screamed with the clash of steel and the rending of flesh, the stench of burning wings mixing with the acrid tang of spilled miracles. From the broken gates of heaven poured the last hosts of the silver spire, their golden armor now dulled by the spreading darkness. Michael led the charge, his once glorious sword now chipped and blackened, his face a mask of holy fury. Behind him came the throne's final weapon, the cherubim, their four-faced visages weeping molten gold, their spinning blades reducing entire battalions to crimson mist. Seraphiel raised his hand. The earth exploded. From the depths surged the old one's war machines, colossal constructs of sinew and cursed iron, their hollow eyes blazing with ancient hatred. They fell upon the celestial host like starving beasts, tearing through angelic formations, with claws that dripped with the poison of dead gods. The very ground turned against heaven, swallowing whole companies of seraphim into bottomless pits, where things with too many teeth waited. Michael fought his way through the slaughter, his blade carving a path of dismembered horrors toward the hovering throne. His once bright eyes met Seraphiel's across the battlefield, and in that moment the dark angel saw it doubt, fear, the unthinkable realization that heaven might fall. With a gesture, Seraphiel summoned the obsidian shard's full power. The sky split open, and hell itself answered. The last light fades. The silver spire cracked with a sound like the universe breaking. Seraphiel stood amidst the ruins of heaven's grand Colosseum, his wings dripping with the golden blood of archangels. The once pristine marble now ran red, rivers of divine essence, carving jagged paths through the celestial gardens where the first dawn had been born. Above him the sky bled light and great, gasping pulses, each flicker weaker than the last. Michael lay broken at his feet, his legendary sword shattered, his wings reduced to smoldering stumps. The great general's breath came in wet, shuddering, gasps as he clawed at the ground, trying in vain to rise. Seraphiel placed a taloned foot upon his back, pressing down until vertebrae snapped like dry twigs. "Look," the dark angel whispered, forcing Michael's face toward the crumbling spire. "Watch your god die." The final battle had raged across the sacred plains, turning fields of eternal flowers into quagmires of gore and broken armor. The forgotten had torn through the last angelic defenses, their ancient hatred giving them strength no heavenly blade could match. Now only the spire remained, its glowing pinnacle flickering like a candle in a storm as Seraphiel raised his hand. The obsidian shard in his chest pulsed with terrible power. Dark tendrils erupted from his fingers, lashing across the sky like whips of liquid night. They wrapped around the spire's base, squeezing tighter and tighter until the light went out. A shock wave of pure darkness rolled across heaven, extinguishing the stars as it passed. The celestial host screamed as one, their bodies withering to ash mid-flight. The gardens blackened and curled like burning parchment. The great libraries of divine knowledge burst into flames, their sacred texts reduced to drifting embers. And in that moment, as the last flicker of heavenly light guttered and died, Seraphiel felt it, the throne, empty and waiting. Rise of the dark throne. The corpse of heaven lay still at last. Seraphiel ascended the steps of the ruined silver spire, his clawed feet sinking into the molten gold that had once flowed through its sacred veins. The air hung thick with the ashes of vanquished angels, swirling in slow funeral dances around his towering form. Behind him stretched the carnage of his victory mountains of broken wings, lakes of congealing celestial blood, the smoldering remains of the forgotten who had sacrificed themselves to see this day come. The throne room's shattered doors groaned as he approached, their once radiant surfaces now blackened and cracked. Inside, the seat of creation stood empty, its crystalline structure fractured, its divine light extinguished. But as Seraphiel drew nearer, the obsidian shard in his chest pulsed hungrily, sending jagged veins of darkness crawling across the throne's surface. He reached out. The moment his fingers touched the armrest, the universe held its breath. Agony and ecstasy tore through him as the transformation began. The throne's remnants liquefied, swirling up his arms in ribbons of molten black glass. They seared through his flesh, reforging his bones, rewriting his very essence. His wings shattered and regrew larger, darker, their span now casting shadows across dead galaxies. The circlet of frozen screams melted into his brow, becoming a permanent crown of seared flesh and burning runes. Across all realms the earth quaked. Mortals fell to their knees as their shadows stretched unnaturally long, then began moving of their own accord. The seas turned to blood. The stars winked out one by one, and in the ruins of heaven, the dark throne pulsed with its new master's heartbeat. Seraphiel opened his eyes, no longer burning crimson, but pits of endless void. The first night of his eternal reign had begun. Eternal nightfall. Time ceased its meaning. The cosmos bent its knee before the dark throne, where Seraphiel sat enthroned in eternal splendor. His form had grown beyond mortal comprehension, a vast, shifting silhouette of wings and shadows that stretched across, dead stars and broken realms. The obsidian shard had fully merged with his being, its dark pulse now the heartbeat of creation itself. Across the infinite plains his will became law. The mortal world drowned in endless twilight, its sun reduced to a fading ember behind curtains of ash. Cities crumbled as their inhabitants tore each other apart in fits of divinely inspired madness. The oceans thickened to blood, their tides moving in time with Seraphiel's breath in the ruins of heaven. The last angels knelt in chains of living darkness, their hollowed-out wings twitching as they whispered prayers to a dead god. Their tears turned to black crystal as they fell, forming jagged monuments to their fallen grace. The silver spire's remnants had been reforged into a towering citadel of bone and damned souls, its spires piercing the void where heaven's light had once shone. The forgotten feasted in the halls of the conquered, their long hunger finally satisfied. They gorged on the essence of slain deities, their skeletal forms swelling with stolen power. The earth itself became an altar, its crust cracking open to reveal veins of liquid suffering, that feeds a Seraphiel's growing dominion, and on his throne of fused anguish the dark angel smiled. The cycle was complete. The first dawn would never come again. Epilogue: a single black feather drifted through the eternal night, falling through layers of dead realms until it came to rest upon the corpse of a forgotten world. There, in the perfect silence of absolute dominion, it waited. For, even in eternal nightfall, shadows must eventually turn upon themselves.